Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Heal and Restore podcast. It snuck back in, didn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Just a little
Had a
bit.
week off here.
A week off. We've been, both of us have been going back and forth with a stinking cold and chest stuff, and
Yeah.
sick one week, good the next week, sick again the next week.
Yeah, so I apologize in advance if we sound like we've got a rattle
But we've
because
got
it's still
to,
there a little bit.
yeah, and we've got to continue on with our podcast. We can't.
We don't want to ignore our
We don't want to ignore
faithful
you.
listener.
Exactly. That's it, our faithfulness, our faithful listener. So, again, welcome to the Heal and Restore podcast with me, Randy, and my wife, Kathy.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We're here. We're not going nowhere.
We've finished off our Christmas holiday.
Christmas holidays over with.
This week is New Year's week.
New Year's week.
New Year. Wow, 2025.
This will be our last episode of 2024.
I like the year 2025. You know why?
Oh, no. Why?
Well, think of the number 2025.
Yeah.
25 is a pretty awesome number.
So is 24.
Yeah, but that's gone now.
It's more awesome because it's me.
Yeah, 24 is gone. 25 is coming. My turn.
Your turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
those that know me know what I mean.
And guess what date that her license plate expires?
My car registration, it says
out of all the dates,
it says it expires 7/25.
The only thing it doesn't do is give the year that you were born.
Nope, but 7/25, that's pretty good.
That's the month and the day you were born.
Yep.
And she's made it quite obvious to me.
Every time I look at the license plate, I get excited.
That's right. Every time she looks at the license plate, who does she remind? Guess what? It's my birthday coming up.
Doesn't take much for me.
We still have 7.5 months, so don't get too excited.
Well, 7 months because it's past the 25th already. Hey, it's the little things in life that make me happy. So
yeah, I know you're simple. You're very simple.
So hey, before we get started on this week's episode, I just want to remind our listening audience and those that are watching on YouTube that we do have our book out on renewing bonds.
Yes,
you can find it on Amazon. It's a great read. Share it. Pick one up, share it. But if you want to get a PDF version of it, you can contact us through our website at healandrestorecounseling.com. Click on the link and we will send you a PDF copy. Fill in your information, we'll send you that PDF copy.
Absolutely. And also I want to touch on something that has come to my attention. It's come to my attention a couple times. People often think that all we do is marriage coaching and counseling.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not true. That is one of the passions we have. Mm-hmm. Well, we do single, one-on-one counseling, coaching. We do trauma coaching. We do addiction coaching as well. So for those of you out there that think that's all we do is marriage, well, it's a big part of what we do.
Yeah.
But even within our marriage couples, we don't believe that the marriage is broken. As individuals, we carry unresolved childhood trauma. 99.9% of our clients, 99.9% of our clients carry in their marriage or bring into their marriage unresolved childhood trauma that they are unaware of.
And that doesn't always look like the things that you think.
No,
sometimes, when people hear unresolved childhood trauma, the first thing that may come to mind is abuse.
Yes.
That's a component.
But
there are other components of childhood trauma that we've all experienced. Most of us have experienced in some fashion, some shape, some form. So if you're unsure and you just know that you're not feeling whole, you're feeling like there's a space missing, reach out to us at healandrestorecounseling.com. We could set up a 45-minute, no cost to you discovery session.
Right.
Find out what's going on with you, see if it's something we can help you with. And we want to make sure that it's a right fit. So that's why we offer that no cost to you coaching consultation. And we can do that in person if you're local to us, or we can do it via Zoom as well. We have clients throughout the whole country.
Right.
And we're here for you. That's the whole thing, is that we want to get you whole. We want to help make you whole.
Exactly. So just be aware of that it's not just marriage counseling and coaching that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's our topic? What are we on today?
Well, based on your putting out there, what people want to hear about, one of the topics was mental health,
Mhm.
right?
So we have a
We have a
question. Yeah, we
question
have a
from,
question. Kathy P had asked about PTSD and what her question
right,
was.
what is PTSD? Post-traumatic stress
Stress.
disorder.
Yeah. So her question was, is not all PTSD is the same, which
Right,
we do
it's not.
know. And then we need learning the PTSD in your significant other, dealing with it will teach you how to navigate versus becoming frustrated.
Exactly.
We've had our experiences of
Oh, yeah.
frustration through PTSD, through your PTSD. You know, I've had a little of it myself,
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
but learning how to navigate it versus sitting in it and becoming frustrated, because that does nothing for the individual suffering from
No.
PTSD, nor does it do anything for the
So,
spouse or the family.
right. A little disclaimer before we start this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We will not and cannot diagnose anybody with any kind of mental disorder.
No.
That's not our job, right? There's professionals that do that. I talk about it a lot because of my personal experience, but also the mentors that I've worked with over the last 20 years have taught me a lot about it. That being said, I know what general anxiety disorder is, depression is like, PTSD, all that. But I'm not the professional that's going to diagnose you with that. If you feel that you might be struggling with any of these, we highly, highly suggest that you seek the help of a professional psychiatrist, not your family doctor, but a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They're the ones that can properly diagnose you with any kind of mental disorder.
Right.
And I stress that, and nothing against your local or your family MD. They're great for physical elements that are going around, but when it comes to the brain,
Go to the
that's where
specialist.
you have to go to the specialist,
Yeah,
being the
definitely.
psychiatrist or the psychologist. And a good psychologist, like Kathy and I have done, will refer you to a psychiatrist if they feel it's
Right.
necessary.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's just kind of jump into this.
Well,
So,
here's the reason we want to talk about this,
okay.
right? What am I writing in my book right now?
Right. No, we know that that's your focus right now in this
I-
book that you're working on. So it's
just
really,
happens to be PTSD.
yeah, and it's a
Right.
hot topic because it's out there.
Right.
People are struggling with it. So, navigating a partner's, a spouse, a family member, it doesn't matter who it is, but navigating PTSD can be challenging.
Oh, very much so.
But with patience, understanding, and the right strategies, you can support them effectively.
Right.
So we've got some tips. The first thing we're going to talk about is educating yourself, and then we're going to get into some levels of what PTSD really is.
Exactly.
So when we talk about educating yourself, we have to learn about PTSD. We have to have an understanding of what PTSD is, including the symptoms like flashbacks, hypervigilance, avoidance, and emotional numbing, because that's part of what
Part of it.
people who have
Very much
experienced
part of it, yeah.
PTSD have experienced.
Disassociation.
Disassociation. We need to recognize that each person experiences it differently. And each person's PTSD is unique to their situation.
Right. Like oftentimes when it comes to trauma, and when I was diagnosed with PTSD, I go, I didn't go to war. But oftentimes, people will say, well, man, I hear your story, Randy. Mine's not near as bad as yours. Yes, it is.
Everybody's is unique.
It's unique, and everybody's trauma is unique to them. And trauma is trauma. Right. And the Greek word for trauma is wound.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of the wound of PTSD is triggers. We have to understand the specific triggers.
Right.
So we need to talk to the person that you're with, whether it's a partner, a spouse, a family member, and we need to learn about any specific triggers that they may have.
It's critical.
So that we can be more mindful, so that I can be more mindful of situations or behaviors that are causing them the distress.
Right. And part of that, we have to know our own triggers.
Right.
Before we can help our partner to understand our triggers.
Yes.
And oftentimes you don't know those triggers until you get into a journey of recovery, where these circumstances, all of a sudden you've opened up your heart and your soul to this recovery journey. And at that point, that's when triggers might start manifesting themselves. At least in my case, in our case, that's exactly what happened. The triggers start manifesting themselves, and you do self-reflection. It's like, where's this coming from?
Right.
Why did I blow up at Kathy when all she said was not now, later?
Right. But the triggers are there even before recovery. You just don't know that they're
You just
triggers.
don't know that
Yeah.
they're
It's
there
like all of a
because,
sudden, wow, this
yeah,
is what this is.
you don't like who I am, too bad. It's
Right.
just who I am.
Yeah.
It's how God made me, and that's just the way it's going to be. Get used to it.
Yeah. They become
No, no,
so
no,
they become so
no.
normal that that's
Exactly.
why you think that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're managing them as if it's something that just it's like hanging on you and it's supposed to be
Right.
there. So
Yes.
that's good.
So there's a lot of information out there about PTSD.
Yeah.
And so, in this part of my follow-up book, The Healing Human Travel Dan, called The Healing Path, um, I talk about it.
Mhm.
And according to best psychiatry and counseling, there are 5 levels of PTSD,
Mhm.
each of them requiring different treatment approaches and varying greatly in the duration of symptoms.
Mm.
We are the belief that, and I strongly believe this, that what helps me won't help Catherine.
Right.
The What help me as I explain it can start putting thoughts into somebody that we might be talking with, and they can start maybe implementing them, and then as needed, they need to adjust um, those I'll say treatments, those ways of healing ourselves.
Mhm.
So the basis of I believe of the recovery in PTSD is pretty much all the same.
Right.
It is a it is a mental, it's a brain disorder.
Right. And it's complex. There's
Very complex. Yes.
multi-dimensional disorder with diverse causes and outcomes.
Right.
So it's not going to look the same for everybody.
No.
PTSD is PTSD, but everybody is going to treat it.
All right.
And originally it was believed that post-traumatic stress disorder,
Oh,
which we
yeah.
call PTSD, was a
PTSD.
condition, PTSD,
Yeah.
sorry, spoke too fast, was a condition exclusive to the military, service members, or veterans. But today we know that PTSD can affect anyone who has experienced an intense and often life-threatening event. So, unlike acute distress disorder, PTSD is characterized by long-term symptoms that can significantly disrupt our daily life. And that is something that people deal with.
Yeah, it's when I was told that I had PTSD, when I was diagnosed with PTSD, I said, wait a minute, I wasn't in war.
Yeah.
So how can I have PTSD? And that's when because my original thought was that PTSD was only
people who experience
the
military.
experience of, war. They've been to war. They've seen god awful things.
Right.
And that level of PTSD is pretty intense.
Yeah. This statistic though just kind of blows my mind that there's an estimated 7.7 million Americans either have or are currently struggling with PTSD, and approximately 8% of the population will eventually develop the disorder.
Yep.
That's just in America. What's going on around the world?
Well, you just think about the pandemic that we
Mhm.
just went through, the PTSD, that there's a lot of PTSD.
Experienced, yeah.
Now, again, I'm not diagnosing people, but there's been a lot of PTSD that was happening during that period.
Just in the medical field alone.
In the medical field alone,
Yeah, that was a lot.
if you had COVID, you were separated from your family. Oftentimes, people died, and their family was never able to say goodbye to them, put closure in that.
And then the nurses and doctors that were in the hospital.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much that go with that.
Amount of PTSD.
So while its severity and manifestations may vary, it is essential to understand the foundational definition of PTSD.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So according to Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, PTSD is an anxiety disorder that is triggered by exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violations. And then the symptoms can arise immediately after the traumatic event takes place, or it can surface, like in your case, years later. Emerging research is now delving into the concept of 5 distinct types of PTSD, providing deeper insights into the complex condition. And we're going to go through some of those. We're
going to go through 5 of them. But the one thing, too, that in a way contradicts that, it can arise immediately or like Kathy said, in my case later, the effects of your abuse and the effects of PTSD, or let's just say the effects of your abuse, is stated by many professionals, immediately affects your psyche. Real quick, people often ask you, Randy, what do you mean by spiritual abuse? Well, there's two kinds. The obvious kind is when somebody that's in a religious authoritative position, a pastor, a priest, somebody on teachers, a parent, a grandparent, when
manager or a boss.
Right, exactly. When they start using, but when I'm talking about spiritual abuse, I'm talking about somebody that's got the spiritual authority over you, right? When they start using that authority to coerce you into doing things that you feel aren't right, that's the obvious spiritual abuse that's out there. What's not obvious is that the minute a child is abused, the spirit of that child has been assassinated.
Right.
That's the devastating spiritual abuse that happens to kids.
Yeah.
Okay. So two examples of PTSD that I want to just go over real quick, and these are both in my book, and they're both been. One was my stepbrother. He was a Vietnam vet, and he served in late 60s, early 70s. And when he came home, Rick and Pam, I have permission to use their name, along with my stepsister and a couple of friends, were at the Winter National Drag Races in Pomona, California. As the car took off, the engine blew. And when the engine blew, Rick immediately assumed in his head, his brain told him, you've got to cover your friends because they're being attacked again.
Right.
Right. So Rick immediately dove on top of his girlfriend, now his wife, and his stepsister and the friends to cover them from the explosion and protect them. Because when that car blew up, all his brain told him was, your camp is being attacked by the Vietnam radicals again. That's one, because what happens is that when PTSD hits you, you go right back to what happened as though it was happening right now.
Yeah.
You experience the experience all over again.
Right.
Another quick one, not going away from military, right? There was a couple, and this is a true story. There was a couple that had been going out for a while, and they'd had a great night. They went home. They went to her house. They had a great passionate night of sex, all that stuff. And in the morning, when she got up, she walked to the bathroom like she normally did. And when she walked out of the bathroom, her boyfriend's shoes were right at the foot of her bed. And she lost it. She freaked out, told the guy, get out of my bed now, get your clothes. Don't even just get the hell out of my house and don't let me see you again. When she went to her therapy session, she was questioning what in God's name happened to me. Well, what they discovered through her therapy and through a lot of questioning and understanding was that when her father would come into her room at night to molest her, he put his shoes exactly where her boyfriend's shoes were. So it triggered that thought immediately. In my case, one of the simple ones, right, of PTSD was I hated anybody coming inside of my safe space. So a lot of people have a tendency to get right in your face and talk to you. Don't do that to me, because I'm better at it now, right? Because that's what my perpetrator did to me oftentimes. And it made me sick, curdled me, pissed me off. And if you ever come up from behind me and touch my back, especially my right side, you were lucky if I didn't knock you out.
That's good.
Okay, so those are a couple examples of some PTSD that really happened.
Yeah. So let's talk about some different types of PTSD that's defined by the best psychiatric and counseling group. So there's 5 different ones we're going to talk about. The very first one is normal stress response.
Right.
So normal stress response is what occurs before PTSD begins. However, it does not always lead up to the full-blown disorder.
Right.
An example might be events like an accident, injuries, illnesses, surgeries. Other sources of unreasonable amounts of tension and stress can all lead to this type of a response. Exactly. So typically, normal stress response can be effectively managed with the support of loved ones, peers, and individuals or group therapy sessions.
Yep.
Individuals suffering from normal stress response could see a recovery within a few weeks.
Exactly. So
now we have to talk about it though, in order to get recovery on it.
Yeah, we have to bring it up. We have to have somebody safe that we can talk to.
Mhm.
And for instance, I was just talking with Kathy about this yesterday. A couple of days ago, there was a very tragic accident on the 303 where a 79-year-old man thought, and we don't know why, but it would be good to go get a ladder that came off of a car in the freeway, and that man got hit and killed. Okay. So what people go right to the condolences for the family, which is right. And
Right.
God, poor guy, blah blah. But what's not spoken about publicly, and maybe not at all, is the amount of trauma that people that witness that accident
Yeah.
are going to go through.
That's kind of your normal stress response.
And man, because it's like you got some guy on the freeway, a human being getting plowed over by a car.
And he's there to help. He was, he was doing out of, we don't know why, but the goodness of his heart, maybe to help avoid anybody else from hitting it. We don't know, but that stress response that these people are going through, those are the type of people that need to start working on immediately that PTSD right away.
You can't minimize the pain that they're going through. You can't minimize the thoughts that are going through their head.
No, not at all.
It's their thoughts. It's their pain. It's a reaction. It might have even triggered something from their far past.
Right.
Right. So
that might be even a deeper part of a PTSD.
A deeper part of it. So that's why it's important when this kind of stuff happens. If the best thing you can do really for any kind of PTSD, right, is immediately be able to talk about it with somebody that's going to listen to you, not try to fix you, validate you and understand you, right?
Yeah.
And again, professional helping you through this is vital. Group therapy works really good. So just be aware of that. For anybody that's listening to this, it's important that when somebody comes to you, right, and is struggling with some trauma they had in the past, don't minimize it.
Yeah. And even for yourself, don't minimize it for yourself. Reach out, get some help. Don't think that it's just, it was just this. Well, this can manifest to things later.
Ain't no big deal. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
Well, and when it comes to childhood trauma, what do we hear? Especially men.
Yeah.
They get over it.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
No, if we got over it, I wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
no.
Exactly.
So then the second type is called acute stress disorder.
Right.
So acute stress disorder, while it's not the same as PTSD, can occur in people who have been exposed to what is or what feels like a life-threatening event, like a natural disaster, loss of loved ones, loss of a job, or a risk of death, are all stressors that can lead to the acute stress disorder.
Right, exactly.
And if it's left untreated, this is the thing. If it's left untreated, acute stress disorder may actually develop into PTSD. So acute stress disorder can be treated through individual and group therapy, medication, and intensive treatments designed by a psychiatrist. So this reminds or a psychologist. This kind of reminds me though of the people that went through these hurricanes this year.
Yes.
This would be a similar situation, that acute stress disorder, and they're still in the midst of it. So, people are there helping them, but they really need some help with a therapist. They need some group therapy because that's a loss that they're never going to forget.
No,
that's a natural disaster that was beyond their control.
We're thinking about adults. What about their children?
Yeah.
See, children are going through this. So I think one of the big problems is that when we go through a traumatic event in our life, whether we're a child or an adult, people tend to want to, the average person out there will minimize what we've been through. Right. That's no big deal. Just, it kind of sucks and it hurts and
everything will get back to normal. Everything
get back to normal. Don't worry about it. Time heals all wounds. I'm telling you right now,
these are weak.
These wounds. In one of my meditations, God clearly spoke to me, Randy, the scars are deeper than you'll ever imagine, and the damage is incomprehensible.
And that's
I want you to hear that loud and clear. The damage is incomprehensible, and the scars are deeper than you'll ever imagine.
And they may not even be scars that are visible. That's
They're not. That's
the
the
thing.
deal. They're
Yeah.
not visible.
You might have a car accident that you might have physical scars from, but something like a natural disaster, you don't have any physical scars of that. So those are
No,
internal scars.
car accidents,
Yeah.
witnessing somebody get hit on a freeway, a dog, a
Yeah.
pet's death. I
No,
mean,
they're scars that you'll never see, but they're scars that people are wearing on the inside.
and you can't minimize how a person
Yeah.
feels.
Yeah. So then our third type is, this is an interesting one, uncomplicated PTSD. Okay. So what is that? Uncomplicated PTSD is linked to one major traumatic event versus multiple events. And it's the easiest form of PTSD to treat.
Right.
Symptoms of uncomplicated PTSD might include avoidance of trauma reminders, I should say, nightmares, flashbacks of an event, irritability, mood changes, changes in relationships. So uncomplicated PTSD can be treated through therapy, medication, or a combination of both.
Right.
All of these PTSDs must be treated. We can't ignore them.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it's uncomplicated, acute. It has to be
something like uncomplicated could be that witnessing that
treated.
person that got hit on the freeway.
Right.
That's the only thing that they ever saw in their life. Right. That one event is going to cause a lot of trauma in their life. It's possible it's going to cause them.
It could lead to that.
It can lead to
Definitely.
PTSD and all that if they don't get help right away. Right. Or versus the PTSD I have was based on physical, emotional, spiritual, and sexual abuse over a period of 5 years.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that's where we'll talk about that, which is complex, right? Now, the one thing that I mentioned before about people, you're gonna want to see a psychiatrist, and a good psychologist say, "Look, I want you to go talk to a psychiatrist," because oftentimes it's going to take meds, right, to help you work through the stabilize it. You won't have to be on them for the rest of your life. No. Possibly, you might have to be, you might not have to be, but what it does is help take the edge off of the things that you're dealing with, so that you can work through them without going off the deep end.
Right. You can heal through them.
Right.
When you have kind of some stability.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's what's important. Right. So this type 4 of PTSD, this is where we get into a little bit more complex PTSD. And so complex PTSD is the opposite of the uncomplicated PTSD.
Right. Which I had complex PTSD.
And it's caused by multiple traumatic events, not just one. Complex PTSD is common in abuse, domestic violence cases, repeated exposure to war or community violence or sudden loss. Community violence can be the neighborhood violence if if you grew up in a bad area.
Right.
Sudden loss, that's something that happens so quick you don't have time to think, and then all of a sudden you've got sudden loss. And so while they share a lot of the same symptoms, the treatment of complex PTSD is a little more intense than uncomplicated PTSD.
Yes.
An example might be individuals with complex PTSD can be diagnosed with borderline or antisocial personality disorder or dissociative disorders. And I have seen that in you over years. You keep your circle very small, and for understandable reasons. Right. And they exhibit behavioral issues such as impulsivity, seen that, aggression, substance abuse, or sexual impulsivity. It can also exhibit extreme emotional issues such as, here we go, intense rage, or depressive or panic disorders.
And touching on rage, I want people to understand that people go, "Man, you're so angry." Well, yeah, but what you're seeing is not anger, it's rage. It's a result. It's a result of unresolved anger. Anger, according to John Lee, and I know this too, is a perfectly fine healing emotion when we're taught to use it properly.
Right.
The problem is we're never taught to use it properly.
Yep.
We're told you can't be angry.
Yes.
Look at your life. Look where you're at. You have no right to be angry. So we keep repressing the anger, because we're told we can't be angry. You're a jerk if you're angry. That's not what we're seeing. Right. It's intense rage that comes out because our cup finally gets so full of unresolved anger, and somebody
Doesn't take
It
much.
doesn't take much. Just that one conversation that you might have had 1,000 times before with your spouse or friends, and this time you just explode.
It came out. Yeah. So this particular complex PTSD, you definitely want to be in therapy for.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
It's a period of time unknown. Nobody knows.
Right.
But it's something that you will work through, I would say probably most of your life.
Yes.
Once you have the tools,
right.
it doesn't affect you as much.
I've been working on my recovery for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, a trigger that I was totally unaware of will pop up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, where in the world did this come through?
Yeah.
Come from? I've done all this work on myself, and this is unresolved. And I'll tell you, the biggest one is the spiritual abuse by spiritual authority people, by pastors. That is one that is so deep.
Yeah, it can come back. It started a long time ago, and experiences brought it back to the forefront. Is really what it is.
PTSD.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then our last PTSD type 5 that we have here is, this is an interesting one. It's called comorbid PTSD. Never heard of this one until now. But comorbid PTSD is a blanket term for co-occurring disorders. So it's applied when a person has more than one mental health concern. Mm-hmm. It's often coupled with substance abuse issues. Comorbid PTSD is extremely common, as many people suffer from it more than one condition at a time. And its best results are achieved when both the commingling mental health condition and a comorbid PTSD are treated at the same time, which is really good. I think they have to be. And many people who suffer from any of these 5 types of PTSD try to treat it on their own, and that doesn't work.
No, you can't. No. You can't do it on your own.
It can include self-medication, and they've done that, and other destructive behaviors. Using drugs or alcohol as a way to numb the pain will only make things worse and prolong your treatment. So we went years of prolonged treatment because of this. And it's critical for your own mental health to gain an understanding of which type of PTSD you believe you're feeling and make a decision to get guidance needed for healing.
And to make that decision, you need to see a psychiatrist professional.
Right.
Now, so I had comorbid mental disorders. Thank God there was no narcissism or personality. But mine was clinical depression, general anxiety disorder, and then the last one was PTSD. And people go, "What did you use for treatment?" I asked my therapist that one day. She's a wonderful person. And she goes, "Randy, I came at it from an eclectical stance," which means you use a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, there's no one specific treatment that's going to help everybody.
Right.
But it kind of, my experience is, and I think it says it right here, it's all treated within the same treatment course that you're taking. Right.
It'll ebb and flow based upon what is discovered through the process.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't say, well, you got PTSD, so we're just going to focus on that. Well, if you got anxiety, that is related to PTSD, mm-hmm. right? And then also depression can be related to so it's this big circle of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was the general anxiety disorder, clinical depression, PTSD, addiction, right? Yeah. It's a plethora of stuff. And the one thing that I know, and what my mentors and my therapists, we can't help you until you quit all the mind altering substances, mm-hmm. other than psychoactive or psychotropic meds that have been prescribed by your psychiatrist. Right. Now, I want to express this because I learned this in Betty Ford. Even a psychiatrist cannot properly diagnose you if you're still taking drugs and drinking heavily. Right. Because your brain is so miswired, mm-hmm. that we've got to get rid of all the substance, all the drugs in our system, give our brain a chance to kind of reset, if you will.
Yeah.
And only then can a proper diagnosis really be treated. And It wasn't until I quit drinking, nobody told me I had to, but it wasn't until I got in recovery that I quit doing all those substances that
you were able to get a proper diagnosis.
Proper diagnosis. And it was tough for a while. But if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, mm-hmm. You've got to
There's,
surrender,
yeah,
completely surrender, say, I'll do whatever it takes to fix myself.
yeah. It's temporary, that
Yeah,
uncomfortableness, that chaotic, crazy chaos that might be going on is temporary. There
exactly.
is help on the other side of that. So it's a matter of making a decision, being open and honest with yourself, number one, being open and honest with your family members, whether it's a spouse, a significant other, parents, children, all of this, there's help on the other side of it. It's all temporary until you can work through it. We don't ever get over it, but we work through it.
We have to work through
We
it.
get tools that will help us for the rest of our life.
Dealing with it is not healing it.
Nope.
Right. It takes a lot of intense work.
Yeah.
And so
this is a really good subject, and there's so much more that we're going to be able to dive into. There's Kathy P gave us the question of our topic tonight, or today, this week. And so we're in a situation where we're going to dive into it a little bit more with some more details of how you can help your significant other if it's you on the other side of it.
And to end this session, this podcast too, I want to do this. I highly recommend and suggest, without hesitation, if you feel that any of this, even a smidgen of it, is happening in your life, please love yourself enough. Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah, that's good.
Love yourself enough to at least reach out and talk to a qualified psychiatrist or psychologist. And oftentimes you can find a team psychologist, psychiatrist that will work together to help you get through this.
Right. And I'll just add to that. If you're unsure, if even you need to do that, reach out to us first. Let Randy give you some thoughts and share his experiences that will give you maybe some hope that the decision you want to make is the right decision.
Exactly.
I think that a lot of people get stuck in that and they just ignore it. But talk to somebody who's experienced it. Let them help guide you and give you some hope to reach out.
And if you're a loved one, right? We always say this: if you're a loved one, you can't fix them.
No.
What you can do is love them unconditionally.
Through that process.
Through that process. Listen to them. Oftentimes, like if you're not getting into the real acute, complex types of PTSD, and even at that, but the non-complex types and stuff, just let your loved one talk to them. And if your loved one won't, find a friend that you can at least confide in. And if you're that friend or that family member, gently say, hey, I can't help you. Yeah. I love you. I'm going to be here for you through the whole process, but I'm going to highly encourage you to seek some professional help.
Absolutely.
Right. It's critical in that, I think most of the time, especially the complex PTSDs, have to be treated with some kind of medication on top of therapy. Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. So this is good. So we're going to have more on PTSD, how you can help your significant other. We'll give you some steps and some tools that you can use if they're in treatment, what they can do to help as well during that process. So good stuff, honey.
Yeah, it is. It is. Good stuff.
So nothing else.
Nothing else? Is that it?
That's all we have.
You already got the house cleaning done for this week?
No, we got a lot to do today.
No, I mean for our podcast. I know for the house. Yeah.
Look, I'm already thinking I got things to do today.
Right.
No, we're good. Just definitely reach out to us through healingrestorecounseling.com, where you can sign up for your 45-minute, no cost to you, freebie GB consultation, coaching, inquiry.
Yes.
And also just check out our book, Renewing Bonds. It's available on Amazon, as well as your PDF copy through our website as well.
Exactly. So
good stuff.
All right. So we're glad you guys joined us. We hope that this enlighten you at least a bit. And remember, Kathy and I are not psychologists or psychiatrists,
but we're your coaches.
We're your coaches.
Coaches in
I
life.
do have the education, but I will not, Kathy, or I will not diagnose anybody with any kind of mental disorder.
Yep.
Okay. So remember this: if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does.
Kathy does.
More importantly, God does. Be blessed, everybody. Have a fabulous week.
Be blessed.